we do the same thing with God that we get angry about that the media does, right? Like think about the gas shortage that happened this past week or is happening or something. I'm not really sure. Is it over? Not over, still continuing, right? So if you look at the media, right, there's like left media that says, hey, this is a result of hoarding, like people's buying and purchasing behavior. This is why this happened. If you look at the media on the right, they sort of said, no, this is a result of the Biden administration. And that's why this whole thing is happening. And it is infuriating because no one can actually figure out what's really going on. Instead, we have these media streams that have their own narrative, and whatever sort of happens in the world, they put that thing in their narrative and make it work, no matter what it is. And it's hard to know what is really going on. But the reality is we do the same thing about God. We have this preconceived narrative about who God is, and whatever the events are and whatever the scripture says, we sort of superimpose that over our pre-existing idea of who God is, and we make it work. And so we use phrases like, well, God would never do that. We have this narrative that we have to fit everything into, and we put God in this box. And that's exactly what Paul had done. But then on this road, Paul meets this God who didn't fit into his box. It challenged his narrative. And that's why Saul's first reaction to the blinding light that appears before him is not, God, what are you doing? His first reaction to this blinding light is, who are you? Who are you, Lord? Now, if you've ever had a friend that did something that was out of character for that friend, perhaps you've responded to them and you've said, who are you right now? Like, what are you even doing, right? You say that when somebody does something that you're like, you're not supposed to be the one doing that. You're not supposed to be saying that. That's not supposed to be happening. Who are you? And that's exactly what Paul says. He met a God that didn't fit into the narrative of who he believed God to be. Now, this is why this is so important to the story and for us. Because the only God who can change our hearts is a God who's actually bigger than our hearts. We need a God who can change our hearts that is bigger than the hearts that God created for us. We need a God that we can't figure out. We need a God that we can't control. We need a God who's bigger than the narratives that we formed. We need a God who's bigger than the boxes we've created him to exist in. We need a God who's constantly surprising us, who tells us things that we don't want to hear, who asks us to do things that we don't want to do. We need a God who can change our hearts because he's not the product of our hearts. And when we meet with God on the road, he always surprises us.